So I would like to talk about the future of AI, and especially the next kind of milestone in AI development, which would be AGI. But the more I researched and prepared for this presentation, the more I realized that the title actually has to be different. So I renamed the presentation to "The Future Will Be Weird," because it will be weird. In fact, it will be so weird that I brought something with me today, which is this. I'm guessing that most of you know what this is. This is an aluminum foil hat, or a tin foil hat, which is the internationally recognized symbol for a crazy person. And I need this today because the future will be weird, and I will be saying some really weird things throughout the presentation. And whenever I do, I will put on the hat to let you know that I'm fully aware that I'm saying really weird things right now, but I'm still aware that I'm saying them. Sound good? All right, so we're not gonna need it in the first part. The first part's all easy and normal. And I still want to mainly talk about AGI. Who knows what AGI stands for? Yes?
Artificial General Intelligence?
Yes, great. AGI stands for Artificial General Intelligence. If you've not heard about the term, don't worry, you will hear a lot about it in the next few years and decades. Because the idea behind AGI is that it represents a category of AI systems that displays truly human-level intelligence, or even above human-level intelligence. And now you could argue that some of the things that AI can do today might already be at this level, but for several reasons, most people would argue that there's still obstacles on the way to AGI, and we're going to talk about them a little bit. But before we go in there, I want to look a little bit at what AI technology can do today. And before we get into the middle of things, I would also like to introduce myself a little bit, because I haven't done that properly. And I don't want to bore you with all of my education and qualification and all of that, but I want to talk a bit about me personally, so you get to know the person behind the presenter. So my name's Moritz, I'm from Munich, I'm married. My wife and I love to travel, so that's a photo of my wife and I in New York. We went to see a Broadway show, that's why we're dressed up all fancy. We also like to travel to warmer places, so this is a photo of me at the beach of Rio de Janeiro. My wife's from Brazil originally, thank you. My wife's from Brazil originally, so we like to travel there once a year. There's some beautiful beaches, really nice. But since I'm from Munich, I'm also into hiking a lot. I have a former colleague of mine who's living in Switzerland, so this was taken in the Swiss mountains. I actually did not want to go on a hike where there would be so much snowfall, but in the end we did it. And I'm really glad that we did, because it was quite the adventure. And then finally, as you may have figured from this, I'm a bit of a hobby photographer as well, which means I'm often behind the camera and there are not so many great photos of myself, but recently my wife took a couple of pictures of me because we have a bit of a hobby home studio set up. So she took some pictures of me that turned out really nicely. So that's me in a nutshell. And also, none of these photos are real. They are all 100% AI generated. So this is not my wife. I don't know who that woman is. She is also not real. She's 100% AI generated as well. I was never at that beach. I wish I had this body. I've done a lot of hikes, but the mountains are not real. None of this is real. And I know that all of you don't know me very well and what I look like, but I can tell you this is shockingly close to what I actually look like. And all it took was this AI model. It's a very recent AI model developed in Germany, actually. We're quite proud of it. It comes from the Black Forest. It's a good one. And I trained it with 13 or 14 actual photos of myself. And now for ethical reasons, I did this with myself or to myself. But I could have used this for anybody. I could have used photos of Marcus or of Christian or of Torbjörn. But I did this with me. And I think it's shockingly good, to be honest. So this is where AI-generated image is today. Now, I remember 1 year ago, we did the first kind of internal presentation at EQS about generative AI and what it could do, and we did a couple of examples also about AI-generated music and AI-generated videos. And all of this was really bad 12 months ago. Like, you could see from a mile away that the video was AI generated because it was all morphy and weird and so on. And also the music was not very impressive. Now we're in a very different place already. And we were wondering recently, how far can you push this today? Can you get AI to create a country song about the Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz? I don't know if you know this law. It's a very famous or infamous law in Germany. It's the German Supply Chain Due Diligence Act. So we tried another AI service called Suno. It's free, actually. And all we put in was a prompt called a country song in the style of Beyoncé's Texas Hold'em with banjo, obviously, about the Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz and how German compliance managers are annoyed by it. Do you want to hear it?
Yeah. Out in the heart of Deutschland, where the rivers run free, compliance managers are grumbling, wolfish in the trees. They speak of Lieferketten-Sorgfaltspflichtengesetz all day. In boardrooms, come find it. They find it hard to play. They shuffle papers, pondering words so grand, with regulations hanging heavy like a solid German brand. Their hearts are back in Texas, where the laws are a bit light. But here in corporate forests, they must battle day and night. Oh, change of the supply, oh, don't you bring us down. We'll dance around the red tape in this old compliance town. Oh, chains of the supply, let our spirits keep their flight. In the land of innovation, we'll find our way to the light.
Quite catchy, isn't it? It's really good. I was really impressed by this because this took about a minute. The service is free. You can all use this tonight, tomorrow, whenever you want to. And all it took was the prompt that you've seen just now. And in a minute, it created the lyrics. It created an artificial voice, obviously, so also that country singer doesn't exist. It sang the song. It created the melody and everything. And it's really catchy. I have this in my mind sometimes. I've also listened to it quite a bit, but it's really good. It's really good. The next thing where we were kind of impressed with the development, especially in the past 12 months, was AI-generated video. So as I mentioned 12 months ago, that was really bad. It was not very impressive. Today, this is an actual photo of me. I promise this is real. I have witnesses. This is from a company event a couple of weeks back in Munich. I was doing a presentation. This is an actual photo. I was there. This is what I looked like on that day. This, on the other hand, has never happened. I will do a lot during a presentation to keep the audience engaged, but dancing is not one of these things. So again, all I did was take the original image, upload it to an AI service, add a prompt to it, which was make the person in the image perform a hip-hop dance. And now I'm not sure if this qualifies as a hip-hop dance, but again, I think it's pretty good. Like, if you look up close, you can still see, okay, there's a bit of weird finger morphing going on and so on. But if you look at how the model understood that this thing in the background is probably a TV, and there's probably some animation playing, and how it does my arm and hand movement, and how this badge dangles around my neck and so on, it's really good. And this went from like 12 months ago being completely unimpressive to this. Actually, whenever this was finished, I looked at it for 15 or 20 minutes and I thought, Jesus, how far we've come with this already. And again, I could have used any image. Like, I realized afterwards, I could use an image of my wife now, of my son, of my coworkers, and add any prompt, make them dance, make them jump in the air, make them do weird things. All of this can be done in theory right now. Again, this is the service. It's called Luma AI. It's free. You don't even need to sign up. You can use your Google account. You can do this tonight, tomorrow. But it's not all fun and weird things that AI can do today. It can also do some really useful things. Who knows what this is? I'm actually really glad that none of you know what this is. This is a folded protein. Yeah, you know?
Oh, this gets in there, yeah. But...
Okay, great. Okay. I was hoping that none of you understands this stuff better than I do, because I'm a bit out of, on a limb here as well. So this is a folded protein. And the way that proteins are created, and I'm by no way a biologist, so this is thin ice here, but you have an amino acid sequence. This is what you can see on the left here. So it's actually kind of like a chain of beads. And then the amino acid sequence is being folded, actually folded into a 3D structure that looks something like this, for example, which is then the protein. And now, understanding these structures is really important for discovering new medicine and new vaccines. So it's really important to understand the structure of the protein for effective drug discovery, for example. And now the problem is, there's a well-known problem actually in the field of biology called the folding problem. And the problem is that for many of these proteins, we don't know how the folding happens. So we know it for 150,000 of these proteins. For 150,000 of these proteins, we understand which kind of amino acid sequence goes in and how is it then folded into a 3D structure. But the problem is there's 200 million of these protein structures out there in nature. And what we've managed so far, these 150,000 protein structures, to understand them, it took us more than 40 years. They were pieced together like manually and painfully by different biologists. To give you an idea, it's a typical PhD student project to uncover one of these structures. So it takes them 4 to 5 years, like the entire PhD duration, to uncover one of these structures. And now recently a couple of AI researchers and scientists at Google DeepMind thought, can we not just take these 150,000 structures where we understand what kind of protein is being folded in the end and the corresponding amino acid sequence, train the model on it, and throw these 200 million other ones in it to get it to figure the rest of them out? And then they did that, and they created the model. The model is called AlphaFold, and they tackled the 200 million other ones, and the model managed to fold all of the other 200 million protein structures within 1 year. So what humans did not manage to get done in 40 plus years, this AI model managed to do in 1 year by a couple X times. And these are some of the results. So you can see on the left, this is what the AlphaFold model predicted of what the structure would look like given an amino acid sequence. And on the right, in green, you see the result of the actual manual experiment by the biologists. So you can see how close this matches. It's basically so close that the folding problem now officially is solved, and all of these results are public now. And why is this such a big deal that I talk about it for 5 minutes? It's such a big deal because this is expected to really help with medicine and vaccine discovery, that we now understand all of these protein structures much better. So these are a couple of examples of what AI can do today. But what we wanted to talk about mainly is, where do we go next? Like, all the stuff's already pretty impressive, but it's happening so fast. So if we look into the future, what is happening next? What does the road to AGI look like? So again, AGI, the category of AI models that are truly on a human or even above human level. The problem that we have right now is often referred to as narrow AI. What does narrow AI mean? Narrow AI means we have AI models that are really capable and really good at very individual, singular tasks. So we have AI that is great at generating text, like GPT, Gemini, Claude, and so on. It can create poems, can create speeches, can create ideas for next compliance training, and so on. We have models that are great at creating music, at creating video, at folding proteins. We have models that are great at translations, at text-to-speech, speech-to-text, and many, many other quite individual use cases. What's kind of missing still is the overall bracket acting like an intelligent human. And now, depending on which expert or scientist you ask, what is missing to get there, you'll get different answers. So for this, I'm completely relying on the opinions of one person, which is Jan LeCun. He's the chief AI scientist at Meta. And he says there are 4 things missing for us for going from today's AI to the next level, which would be AGI. The first thing is an understanding of the physical world. Now, if you ask ChatGPT a kind of physical world question, if I ask ChatGPT, hey ChatGPT, what happens if I put my hand in the fire? Then ChatGPT will still say, hey Moritz, that's probably not a good idea because it's going to really hurt and you're going to get some severe skin damage and so on. But it does not really understand it. It only understands the kind of language representation of that, but it does not have a model of our 3D world and our 3D space. And most people would say that this is required to really be an intelligent human because our 3D world is very important to us. Then the ability to remember. If you're a frequent ChatGPT user, you might have seen that they have a new feature. It's a bit of a scary feature. But if you ask a question, then sometimes there's popping up the message, memory updated. So ChatGPT starts to remember certain things about stuff that you asked, like if you have kids or if you're married or something like that. So it tries to update its memory, which makes a lot of sense and is a really important human factor, because if I run into Christian or something, then I will not start the conversation by saying, hey Christian, how can I be helpful to you? But I will say, hey Christian, how was the train ride from Munich to here? Because I know this stuff, right? Because I can remember it. But AI today is not very good at remembering stuff, so that would be missing on the way to AGI. Next, the ability to reason. Large language models have some degree of reasoning capabilities, but it's not very strong yet. And finally, the ability to plan. And that's a big one as well, because right now, no matter what task you want to get done, you always need to tell the AI, and ideally as detailed as possible. And that's not really what we want long-term, right? We just want to give a big area of responsibility to a system to truly have an assistant. Now, all of these are being worked on. So the answer to the physical world problem could be this. There's a lot of innovation happening in the robotics field, so robots are getting really, really good these days. They're getting more and more refined, especially the finger movement and the kind of tactile sensations in robots' hands. This is an example of Tesla, the Tesla Optimus Generation 2. So this could help. And there's an interesting development also happening where the field of AI and the field of robotics that were quite independent so far, they're starting to come together. So far AI technology was really focused on neural networks and generative AI, whereas robotics was focused on motors and sensors and pre-programmed instructions. So things like, dear robot, please take this box from here and bring it over there. Now these things are coming together, which means we can have things like learning robots that understand what is happening in the world and learn from it. We have text-to-speech, so robots sound a lot more human today than they would a couple of years ago with object recognition, and all of this creates really powerful robots going forward. The other thing that is happening, where a lot is happening right now, is AI agency. So that is the effort to get AI to do more things on its own, to become more self-dependent, basically. And the goal of that is to go from prompts like, please give me 5 ideas for our next compliance training about corruption and bribery, to you are now a junior compliance manager in our team, here's your onboarding plan, enjoy. But kind of figure out yourself what the challenges are and what the project should be and go get it done. All right, and this brings us to the final part. The future will be weird. We still don't need the hat. We're going to start easy. We're going to start with something familiar. You probably know this guy. I don't think we need to make a quiz out of this. This is Elon Musk. You know him, you know a couple of his companies probably that he founded and is running. You definitely know Tesla, everybody knows Tesla by now. You probably know X, previously Twitter, still hard to make the jump, but it's now X. You probably know SpaceX, which is Musk's effort of going to Mars and bringing humans to Mars for some reason. And there's another company that many people have not heard of yet, which is called Neuralink. And that's the one I would like to talk about a little bit. Has anybody heard of Neuralink?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Oh, quite some people. Okay, good. So Neuralink is a company that is working on a device called the Neuralink device. This is what it looks like. So you can kind of figure from the fingers how big it is. So it's about of a coin-sized thing, a little thicker. And then there are these threads attached to it. So there's 64 threads. Each thread is smaller than a human hair. And the way that this works is it's a so-called brain-computer interface, or BCI. So the way that it works is there is a circular hole being cut into the skull. And this is where the device is being implanted, like this part here is being implanted in the skull. And these threads are then placed onto different parts of the brain to measure electric signals in the neurons in the brain. Right now, globally, there is one human that has this device implanted. His name is Noland Arbor. This is a photo of him. You can kind of see the little bump here. This is where the implant is. A couple of facts about Noland. Noland is 30 years old. He is from Yuma, Arizona. He had an accident in 2016 where he suffered a severe spinal cord injury, so he's paralyzed from the shoulders down. He can still move his head and talk, and his brain works, but he cannot move his hands or his arms or his legs or anything. And he got the Neuralink device implanted in January 2024 as the first human ever. So he's the first and only human that has the Neuralink device in his brain right now. So what can Noland now do with this device? I brought a clip of that. I hope that it loads. We had a bit of internet issues earlier, but let's see if it works because it explains it really well. I think it does, okay. So we're going to watch the first 2.5 minutes of this.
There's a lot of time to sit and think, so I thought through basically my whole life and realized all the mistakes I made and what I could do better.
Then, just last year, Noland, now 30, receiving a life-changing opportunity.
One day, one of my buddies from college called me up. We talked pretty regularly, and he was like, hey, Neuralink, they opened up the human trials. And I said, what's Neuralink?
Neuralink, co-founded by Elon Musk, is an experimental implantable brain-computer interface, or BCI. A chip surgically implanted by a robot and connected by threads to a patient's brain that allows the patient to control a computer or smartphone with their mind.
And this is all from there to there. And then, wow.
Neuralink is not the only company working on this technology. Several others are also testing their BCIs in paralyzed volunteers. Noland now joins that small group as Neuralink's first patient.
I was just very happy that I would be a part of something that I believe is so monumental in this next step forward of helping people with paralysis.
What can you do now with the chip implanted that you could not do prior?
I can control a computer just like anyone else can, which is not something I was able to do beforehand.
You just played some music?
Yeah, man.
That's awesome. Do you worry because you are the first patient that something unforeseen?
Okay, that's about as far as we're gonna watch it. So,
Right now.
To recap this, Noland has this in his brain. It's connected, it's really weird actually, it's connected via Bluetooth to an app on a smartphone. That's connected to a regular MacBook, one like this one. And he can control the cursor on this MacBook by thinking about it. And there's some really interesting interviews with him where he explains how exactly that works. because in the beginning he tried to imagine him moving the hand in that direction, and then at some point he switched to only imagining the cursor to moving to a specific place on the screen. So he's now really moving the cursor by his thoughts and not any in-between movement imagination. So this is where we are, and Nolan is actually already pretty good at this, because he's skipping a lot of the steps that we need to do, right? So we need to think, okay, I want to move the cursor somewhere. Then this needs to go to our arm, through our arm, to the hand. We need to move the mouse. We need to move it somewhere. We need to click. All of these steps, Nolan is skipping. He just thinks it, and it moves and clicks. The next step, what the Neuralink team is working on, and Nolan is experimenting with at the moment, is typing. Now the way that he's trying this right now is imagining sign language, which then kind of translates into letters and words. They're somewhat confident that they will be able to skip this step at some point as well and try to imagine words in the end that would appear on the screen. I feel it's almost time for that. And this would eventually lead to even able-bodied persons to be more productive potentially than we are right now with our old keyboard and mouse approach. The next potential iteration of that would be not going only the one direction to read signals from the brain, but being able to insert signals back into the brain. They're also working on this already. There's another product that they're working on called Blindsight. And the idea of Blindsight is making blind people see again. And the way that this would work is you use a regular video camera, you take the signal from the video camera, you translate it into electric signals, and you feed those into the parts of the brain that are responsible for imagery. So you kind of recreate the image that we see through the regular eye process directly in the brain. They're already running experiments on this with monkeys, and they have the first positive indications that with a very low resolution and very early steps, obviously, it would work. And this would allow, okay, now it's finally had time. And this would allow for some really weird use cases, like we could be able to insert images or memories or emotions into the brain. I know it sounds, I'm wearing the hat. I know it sounds really weird, but it's not impossible. So especially the images, so you need to imagine this like watching a movie, but you're not actually looking at a screen, but the signal is directly fed into that part of the brain that is responsible for processing imagery. The next potential iteration of that I think is not so unrealistic in any way, would be connecting the BCI to the internet, and then with that also AI models that we have. And this is actually not so new for humans. So we've always tried to augment our intelligence by using technology. So if you look 30 years back and you were at a bar and you were discussing about how tall is the Eiffel Tower, the only way that you had back then is either somebody in the bar knows for sure, but then you still cannot be sure if the person's actually right, or you had to run home, go to the bookshelf, look for the encyclopedia, find the book with E, then go to Eiffel Tower and then see that the Eiffel Tower is 305 meters tall on a good day. Today, the way that it works is I take out my phone, I look it up, right? But that's a really cumbersome process still, so I have to get out my phone, I need to unlock it, then I need to decide, should I Google this, should I ask GPT, should I ask Perplexity, I still need to type something in, and then I get an answer back. So it still takes 15, 20 seconds or something like that. So in the future, if we have a BCI, and the BCI is connected to the internet, and potentially also AI models, we would get the answer basically immediately. So we would think, we don't know how tall the Eiffel Tower is, and our brain would tell us directly. And this would truly supercharge our abilities, like knowledge, or also memory. So imagine everything that we see and experience is being directly stored on a cloud, for example. And it would start blurring the lines between human and artificial intelligence. So it would be the point in time where we start merging with AI, what is often referred to. And then finally, and this is the last weird step, I promise, we could allow BCIs to directly communicate with each other. So let's assume I have a Neuralink, somebody else has a Neuralink. We skip the communication forms that we have right now, like language or written communication, but the brains directly communicate to each other with their signal processing. Because also the communication forms that we have right now, they're kind of inefficient, right? So I need to think a thought, I need to verbalize it, I need to say it, and language takes forever. Like you're listening to me for 40 minutes now. How much more efficient would it be if I could just transmit all of the thoughts to you? So this could be kind of the last iteration and the, I guess, weirdest one. So we're almost done. There's one more weird thing I wanted to talk about. And looking at the timeline, so where are we today? We're in 2024, and what we have are these really capable generative AI models. And now in general, there's no consensus about when AGI could happen. There's a couple of experts that think it might arrive in 2029, but obviously nobody knows for sure. And it's really hard to predict because we're on an exponential development of all of this at the moment as well. But let's assume it arrives in 2029. And then there's another really weird event that some people predict for 2045. Again, nobody knows. And this is a very theoretical event that I still think is important to think about or talk about, and that is the singularity. Now, what on earth is the singularity? The singularity is a theoretical event, a point in time, that if we assume that all of this AI development happens as exponential as it does in the next years and decades as well, then the assumption is that there will be a point in time when AI becomes significantly smarter than humans and starts improving itself faster than we can understand or control. Especially if we start merging more with artificial intelligence, it would basically mean we don't know what's happening anymore. So it could be like, there are problems that are too complex for us to solve, which would be solved by AI. It could mean we wake up and we have new abilities. We could play music instruments instantly, or we could solve math problems instantly. And there might be new forms of entertainment and communication that we cannot even imagine yet. So it's really hard to think about because it's like imagining a new color, basically, or trying to tell a hamster how the internet's working. It's something that we cannot imagine right now, and that would be what the singularity is. And I'm going to leave you with one provocative question around all of this, and then we made it. And the question is there anything uniquely human if we look 50, 100, 150 years into the future? Is there anything uniquely human that cannot be replicated by technology? And now I know I haven't talked a lot about compliance and ethics questions in particular, but I think there's a million ethics questions connected to all of this. And I want to lay all of this out there for you, the professionals, to reflect and think about this, and hopefully have some inspiring discussions later. Thank you very much for listening.